Commander Taesung stood at the observation window of Titan orbital platform and stared into the black void of space. He had been stationed here for 3 years now, watching over humanity's newest military installation. His gray hair and tired eyes showed the weight of his service. 15 years ago, humans had discovered faster-than-light travel. Now they had spread to 12 colonies across the solar system. But out there, beyond human space, waited civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. The aliens barely noticed humanity. They called humans the primitives or the newcomers. At the last galactic meeting, Earth's ambassador had been laughed at openly. The alien empires thought human weapons were jokes. Bullets and missiles? How backward. How pathetic. They used energy weapons that could melt steel in seconds. They had shields that could stop plasma fire. What could simple kinetic weapons do against such technology? Dr. Hana walked into the observation deck carrying her datapad. She was younger than Taesung, maybe 40 years old, with sharp eyes that never stopped calculating. She had spent 5 years designing the weapon that sat beneath the platform. Project Railhammer, they called it. A mass driver unlike anything humans had built before. The calculations are complete, Hana said quietly. We can fire whenever command gives the order. Taesung nodded slowly. Do you think they'll let us? The politicians are afraid. They think if we show this weapon, the aliens will see it as a threat. Hana laughed, but there was no humor in it. The aliens already see us as nothing. Maybe that's worse than being seen as a threat. Far from Titan, on the neutral station called Axion Prime, Ambassador Jiwon sat in the concordance chamber. This massive room floated in space between 7 alien empires. Each empire sent representatives here to discuss galactic matters. The chamber was beautiful, built from materials that shimmered and changed color. But Jiwon felt small here, alone. The representative from the Velkari Empire had just finished speaking. His name was impossible for human tongues to pronounce, so Jiwon simply thought of him as the Velkari. He was tall, covered in scales that reflected light, with multiple eyes that blinked independently. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator device. The human petition for trade routes through Sector 7 is denied, the Velkari said. His voice carried contempt. Primitives who still use ballistic weapons have no business in civilized space. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when you have learned to build proper technology, we will reconsider. The other alien representatives made sounds that the translator interpreted as laughter. Jiwon felt her face grow hot with anger, but she kept her expression neutral. Getting angry would only prove their point. Instead, she stood and bowed politely. The United Earth government thanks the Concordance for their consideration, she said formally. Then she left the chamber with as much dignity as she could manage. Back on Titan, Taesung received an urgent message. His second-in-command, a young officer named Minho, brought it to him personally instead of sending it through normal channels. That meant it was bad news. Sir, intelligence has picked up movement from the Velkari fleet, Minho said. His hands shook slightly as he handed over the datapad. They're mobilizing near the edge of our space. 200 ships, maybe more. Taesung felt ice in his stomach. 200? That's not a patrol. That's an invasion force. Should I sound the alert, sir? Not yet. Let me verify this first. We don't want to start a panic. But Taesung knew the readings were accurate. The Velkari were coming. And why shouldn't they? Humanity had no way to stop them. Human shields were weak compared to alien technology. Human weapons couldn't even scratch their hulls. It would be a massacre. He thought about the weapon below him, the mass driver that Hana had spent years perfecting. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy what humans could really do. Captain Dongwu commanded the ESS Indomitable, Earth's first deep space warship. It was small compared to alien vessels, barely 400 meters long. But it was fast and it carried the best weapons humanity could build. Dongwu was young for a captain, only 35, but he had proven himself in the colonies during the Mars Rebellion. He understood warfare. When the alert came through about the Velkari fleet movement, Dongwu felt his pulse quicken. This was what they had trained for. This was what everyone had feared since first contact with the aliens. The moment when talking ended and shooting began. All hands to battle stations, he ordered calmly. Navigation, plot a course to Jupiter's orbital zone. We'll meet them there if they cross into our space. His crew moved with practiced efficiency. They were scared. Dongwu could see it in their eyes, but they were professionals. They would do their duty even if it meant dying today. On Titan, Dr. Hanna stood in the control room of Project Railhammer. The mass driver stretched for 20 kilometers beneath the platform, a massive electromagnetic tunnel that could accelerate objects to incredible speeds. She had designed it to fire solid tungsten rods, each one 6 meters long and weighing 20 tons. Simple, dense metal. Nothing fancy, nothing high-tech, but the speed. That was what mattered. The speed was everything. Engineer Yuna worked at the main control panel, running system checks. She was Hana's best student, someone who understood the mathematics behind the weapon. All systems are green, Yuna reported. We're ready to fire on your command, Doctor. Hana looked at the targeting display. It showed the space around Jupiter, where Captain Dongwu's ship was heading, where the Velkari fleet would arrive soon. The distance was immense. Over 4 astronomical units. The tungsten rod would take time to cross that distance, even at the speeds they could achieve. Not yet, Hana said. We wait for the order from command. That order came 3 hours later. The Velkari fleet had crossed into human space. They had ignored all warnings. They were advancing on Jupiter, where Earth's small defense fleet had gathered. Admiral Kyung-soo, the supreme commander of all Earth's military forces, sent the authorization personally. Project Railhammer is authorized to fire a designated target. God help us all. Taesung stood beside Hana in the control room. His hands were clasped behind his back, military straight despite the fear he felt. Are you certain about this, Doctor? Once we fire, there's no taking it back. Hana's finger hovered over the final activation button. I've checked the math 1,000 times. The tungsten rod will hit their flagship. The question is whether it will do any damage. And if it doesn't, then we've wasted a very expensive bullet, and the Velkari will laugh at us before they destroy our fleet. Hana pressed the button. Firing now! Deep in the mass driver, electromagnetic coils activated in sequence. The tungsten rod began to move, slowly at first, then faster and faster. It accelerated down the 20-kilometer tunnel, gaining speed with every meter. The power requirements were enormous. Half of Titan's energy grid fed into this single shot. The rod left the barrel at 45,000 kilometers per second, 15% the speed of light. It became a silent bullet racing through the void of space, invisible to most sensors, carrying kinetic energy that defied imagination. Hana watched the tracking display. Time to target, 3 hours, 17 minutes. Taesung nodded. Then we wait, and we pray that physics is on our side. Across human space, people went about their daily lives unaware that everything was about to change. On Earth, families ate dinner. On Mars, miners dug through red rock. On the orbital colonies, children played in zero gravity. None of them knew that in a few hours, humanity would either prove itself to the galaxy or be crushed into extinction. Ambassador Ji-won had returned to her quarters on Axion Prime when her communicator beeped. It was Admiral Kyung-soo himself. His face on the screen looked grim. Ambassador, you need to return to the concordance chamber immediately. The Velkari have invaded our space. We've engaged them, and we've fired something they've never seen before. When it hits, the whole galaxy is going to know about it. Be ready for anything. Ji-won felt her heart racing. What did we fire? A rock, Kyung-soo said simply. The fastest rock anyone has ever thrown. Let's hope it's fast enough. The Velkari war prince Thexthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance. He was pleased with himself. 200 warships followed his command, the largest fleet the Velkari Empire had assembled in 50 years. They had crossed into human territory 3 hours ago, and the primitives had done exactly what he expected. They had run away, well, not quite run away. A handful of human ships had positioned themselves near Jupiter, as if they could somehow stop his fleet. Thexthar found this amusing. The humans had courage, he would give them that. But courage meant nothing against superior technology. His ships had shields that could absorb any attack the humans could throw at them. His weapons could melt through human hulls like hot knives through soft protein matter. War Prince, the human vessels are attempting to establish communication, his sensor officer reported. Ignore them, Thexthar said, waving one of his forearms dismissively. They have nothing to say that interests me. Maintain course. When we reach their defensive position, we will demonstrate the price of refusing Velkari authority. On the ESS Indomitable, Captain Dongwu watched the Velkari fleet approach. They moved in perfect formation, arrogant and unhurried. They knew they were stronger. They knew humanity couldn't hurt them. And they were right. Conventional weapons would do nothing against those shields. Sir, they're not responding to our hails. Navigation Officer Minho reported. They're still advancing. Dongwu studied the tactical display. The Velkari fleet would be in weapons range in 20 minutes. His small force of 12 human warships couldn't possibly win this fight. But they could buy time. Time for whatever Admiral Kyung-soo had planned. Time for whatever that mysterious weapon on Titan was supposed to do. All ships prepare to engage, Dongwu ordered. Target their lead vessels. Concentrate fire. Maybe we can slow them down. His weapons officer, a woman named Su-bin, looked at him with doubt in her eyes. Captain, our missiles won't even scratch their shields. I know, but we have to try. Fire when ready. The human fleet opened fire. Missiles streaked across the void, followed by railgun rounds moving at a fraction of light speed. It was an impressive display of firepower. Against human ships, it would have been devastating. Against Velkari shields, it was like rain against stone. The Velkari energy shields absorbed everything. Not a single shot touched their hulls. Thexthar laughed as he watched the human weapons splash uselessly against his ship's defenses. Pathetic, he said. Return fire. Destroy the lead vessel. Show them what real weapons can do. Purple beams of plasma energy lanced out from the Velkari ships. The ESS Seoul, one of Dongwu's escort frigates, took a direct hit. Its shields collapsed instantly. The second hit carved through the hull, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. The ship broke apart, its reactor going critical in a flash of light. 300 human lives ended in seconds. Dongwu gripped his command chair. He felt sick, but he couldn't show it. Evasive maneuvers, scatter formation, make them work for their kills. On Titan, Dr. Hana watched her screens with intense focus. The tungsten rod was still traveling through space, invisible and silent. It had been flying for 2 hours now. 1 more hour until impact. She had calculated everything perfectly. The trajectory, the speed, the target's predicted position. But there were so many variables. What if the Velkari flagship moved? What if her calculations were wrong by even a fraction of a degree? Engineer Yuna brought her coffee, but Hana didn't drink it. She couldn't take her eyes off the tracking display. Come on, she whispered. Just keep flying straight. Just hit them. Commander Taesung had left the control room to coordinate with Admiral Kyung-soo. He returned now, his face grim. They've destroyed the Seoul. The rest of Dongwu's fleet is taking heavy fire. They can't hold much longer. 53 minutes until impact, Hana said quietly. Tell them to hold for 53 more minutes. They might not have 53 minutes. Then tell them to run. Tell them to scatter. Anything to stay alive until this rod hits. Taesung nodded and got back on the communication channel. Hana turned to her calculations again. She had designed this weapon based on simple physics. Kinetic energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared. The tungsten rod had a mass of 20 tons. Its velocity was 45,000 kilometers per second. When it hit something, it would release energy equivalent to over 2 gigatons of TNT. More explosive power than the largest nuclear weapon humanity had ever built. All packed into a simple metal rod. No warhead. No explosives. Just mass and speed. The aliens had never built weapons like this. They relied on energy weapons, which dissipated over distance. They relied on shields that could absorb energy. They had optimized their entire military doctrine around energy-based combat. They had forgotten that the universe's most destructive force was something much simpler. Matter moving really, really fast. War Prince Thexthar was growing bored. The humans were running now, their ships breaking formation and fleeing in different directions. Smart, but ultimately useless. His fleet would hunt them down one by one. He had already destroyed 4 human vessels. 8 remained. Pursue them, he ordered. I want every human ship destroyed before we move on to their colonies. His sensor officer suddenly made an alert sound. War Prince, I'm detecting an anomaly. Something approaching our position at high velocity. Thexthar turned to look at the display. What kind of something? Unknown. It's very small. Moving at approximately 15% light speed. Mass readings suggest it's solid matter, not energy. Thexthar frowned. Debris? A meteor? Possible. But the trajectory seems too precise. It's heading directly toward our position. How long until it reaches us? 12 minutes, War Prince. Thexthar considered this. 12 minutes. The object was too small to be a ship, too slow to be a proper weapon. The Velkari had experimented with kinetic weapons centuries ago and abandoned them. They were too easy to dodge, too slow to hit a maneuvering target. This was probably just some human trick, a distraction while their ships tried to escape. Ignore it, Thexthar said. Maintain pursuit of the human vessels. If this object comes close, our shields will handle it. On the Indomitable, Captain Dongwu received a coded message from Admiral Kyung-soo. It was simple and direct. Impact in 10 minutes.
Get clear.
Minimum safe distance, 50,000 kilometers. Dongwu didn't know what was about to happen, but he knew how to follow orders. All ships emergency burn. Put as much distance between us and the Valkyrie fleet as possible. Maximum acceleration. Now. The human ships fired their engines at full power, racing away from the alien fleet. The Valkyrie pursued, but they were larger and slower. The gap between the fleets widened. 40,000 kilometers, 45,000, 50,000. Dr. Hana counted down the seconds. 5 minutes. 4 minutes. 3 minutes. Tae-sung stood beside her, his hands gripping the railing. Around them, every technician and engineer had stopped working. Everyone watched the same screen, the tracking display that showed a tiny dot representing the tungsten rod and a larger cluster of dots representing the Valkyrie fleet. 2 minutes. Ambassador Ji-won had gathered the other alien representatives in the concordance chamber. They had come reluctantly, confused by her urgency. The Valkyrie representative was not present, of course. He was probably celebrating his empire's easy victory over humanity. "What is the meaning of this, human?" asked the Thalorian counselor, an ancient being who looked like a floating collection of lights. "Why have you called us here?" "Because something is about to happen," Ji-won said. "Something that will change everything. I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to witness what humanity can do." She activated a holographic display that showed the space near Jupiter. The Valkyrie fleet shone in red. The human ships shone in blue, and one tiny white dot, moving impossibly fast. "What is that?" asked the Thalorian counselor. "That," Ji-won said quietly, "is a rock." On Titan, Hana counted down the final seconds. 10-9-8. War Prince Thexthar was reviewing attack plans when his sensor officer made a loud alarm sound. "War Prince, that object is going to hit us. Impact in 5 seconds. Thexthar looked at the display. The object was too close now to avoid. But it was just debris. His shields could handle debris. Brace for it. The tungsten rod hit the Eternal Dominance's energy shield at 45,000 kilometers per second. The shield, designed to absorb and dissipate plasma energy, did nothing to slow solid matter. The rod passed through the shield as if it wasn't there. It struck the flagship's hull at the same impossible speed. The kinetic energy released was beyond imagination. The tungsten rod didn't just penetrate the ship. It vaporized everything it touched. Metal became plasma. Plasma became expanding gas. The flagship exploded from the inside out, torn apart by forces that made nuclear weapons look gentle. War Prince Thexthar, his crew of 5,000, and the most powerful warship in the Valkyrie fleet ceased to exist in a fraction of a second. But the tungsten rod didn't stop. It had lost some of its energy, but it still moved at thousands of kilometers per second. It punched through the expanding debris cloud and hit the ship behind the flagship. Then the ship behind that one. Then the ship behind that one. 4 Valkyrie warships were destroyed in the time it took to blink. The explosion lit up space like a new sun. The light from the explosion took several minutes to reach Earth. When it did, observatories across the planet recorded it. Astronomers who had been tracking the Valkyrie fleet invasion suddenly saw 4 massive energy signatures appear on their screens. For a moment, they thought Earth's fleet had somehow won. Then they saw the data about what had actually happened, and they understood something fundamental had changed. On Titan, Dr. Hana stared at her screens and felt her legs go weak. Engineer Yuna caught her before she fell. "Doctor, are you all right?" "It worked," Hana whispered. Her voice was shaking. It actually worked. The shields didn't stop it. Nothing stopped it. Commander Tae-sung was already on the communication channel with Admiral Kyung-soo. "Sir, confirm visual on target. The flagship is destroyed. 3 additional vessels also destroyed. The projectile passed through all 4 ships." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Kyung-soo's voice came through and it sounded different. Quieter. More serious. "Confirmed. 4 Valkyrie warships destroyed with a single shot. The rest of their fleet is in disarray. Captain Dongwu's ships are pressing the advantage." Tae-sung allowed himself a small smile. "Should we prepare another round, sir?" "Not yet. Let's see what the Velkari do next. If they retreat, we let them go. If they advance, we fire again. And Commander? Start preparing the mass drivers on Luna and Ceres. I want them operational within 24 hours. Understood. Sir. In the concordance chamber, every alien representative stared at the holographic display in complete silence. They had all watched the white dot intersect with the red dots. They had all seen 4 Velkari warships vanish from existence. The mathematical readouts told them what had happened, but their minds struggled to accept it. Ambassador Ji-Wan stood at the center of the chamber and let them process what they had seen. She had prepared a speech, something diplomatic and careful, but looking at their shocked faces, she decided to speak plainly instead. That was a mass driver, she said quietly. A weapon that accelerates solid projectiles to relativistic speeds using electromagnetic force. The humans call it Project Railhammer. We fired a 20-ton tungsten rod at 15% the speed of light. As you saw, it passed through Velkari shields as if they weren't there. The Thalorian counselor's lights flickered in patterns that suggested confusion. But kinetic weapons are obsolete. We abandoned such primitive technology millennia ago. They're too slow, too easy to evade. Too slow? Ji-Wan pulled up the weapon specifications. This projectile crossed 4 astronomical units in 3 hours. By the time Velkari sensors detected it, they had seconds to react. Not enough time to move capital ships. And as for being primitive, she smiled without humor. Sometimes the oldest ideas work best, especially when everyone has forgotten how to defend against them. A representative from the Krell Collective, a species that looked like crystalline insects, made clicking sounds. The translator rendered it as, "Your energy shields. They are inferior to ours. How do you survive energy weapons?" "We don't rely on shields the same way you do," Ji-Wan explained. "We use armor, ablative plating, point defense systems, multiple redundant hulls. We learned to build ships that can take damage and keep fighting. While you perfected shields, we perfected endurance." Another representative spoke up. "How many of these mass drivers do you possess?" Ji-Wan had been waiting for that question. "Enough, and we can build more. Any moon or large asteroid can serve as a mounting point. The technology is not complicated. It's just engineering." That was a lie, of course. The mass driver was extremely complicated. The power requirements were enormous. The calculations needed for accurate targeting across interplanetary distances were incredibly complex. But the aliens didn't need to know that. Let them think humanity could build these weapons easily. Let them fear. On the battlefield near Jupiter, Captain Dongwu watched the Velkari fleet begin to retreat. They were pulling back, abandoning their attack formation, trying to put distance between themselves and whatever had just killed their flagship. His tactical officer, Su Bin, reported that several Velkari ships had sustained damage from the debris and radiation of the explosion. "Sir, should we pursue?" Dongwu considered it. His fleet was still outgunned. The Velkari had lost 4 ships, but that still left nearly 200. If they regrouped and attacked again, humanity would still lose. But they weren't attacking. They were running. "No," Dongwu said finally. "Let them go. We've made our point." He opened a channel to the Velkari fleet. This time they answered. The face that appeared on his screen was not War Prince Thexthar. It was a different Velkari, one who looked older with scars across his scales. "Human vessel," the Velkari said. His voice carried no contempt now, only caution. "I am Sub-Commander Reckleth, now in command of this fleet. We are withdrawing from your territory. We did not understand the nature of your weapons. We were mistaken in our approach." "Tell your empire something," Dongwu said. "Tell them that humanity doesn't want war. We never did. But if you attack us again, we will defend ourselves. And now you know what that means." Reckleth bowed his head slightly. "Your message will be delivered, human captain. May we collect the remains of our dead before we withdraw?" Dongwu felt a pang of sympathy. Enemy or not, they were still living beings who had died in battle. "You may. You have 12 hours. After that, we want you out of our system." The transmission ended. Dongwu sat back in his command chair and let out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands were shaking. Minho, his navigation officer, noticed. "Sir, are you all right? We just watched 4 ships full of living beings get vaporized by a weapon we created," Dongwu said quietly. "I'm not sure all right is possible right now." Back on Earth, in the headquarters of the United Earth Government, President Dae-jung met with his military advisors and civilian council. Everyone was talking at once, excited and terrified in equal measure. Admiral Kyung-soo's report had detailed everything: the successful test of the mass driver, the destruction of the Valkyrie flagship, the retreat of their invasion fleet. "Order," President Dae-jung called out. The room fell silent. He was an older man, nearly 70, with white hair and eyes that had seen too much in his time as a resistance fighter during the corporate wars. He had been elected president because people trusted his judgment. Now that judgment was being tested. "We have a decision to make," Dae-jung said. "This weapon has changed everything. The question is, what do we do with it? Do we share the technology with other species to prevent an arms race? Do we keep it secret and maintain our advantage? Or do we build more and use them to guarantee our security?" General Yoonji, the head of Earth's ground forces, spoke first. "We keep it secret. This is the first time in human history we have a military advantage over alien civilizations. We cannot give that up." But Dr. Hana, who had been called to the meeting via video link from Titan, disagreed. "The technology isn't really secret anymore. Every species with advanced sensors watched that shot. They have all the data they need to understand the principles. Within a year, maybe less, they'll figure out how to build their own mass drivers." "Then what do you suggest, Doctor?" President Dae-jung asked. "Build more. Build them faster than anyone else can. Position them throughout our territory so that any attacker knows they'll be hit from multiple angles. Make the cost of attacking humanity so high that no one will risk it. That's how we stay safe." Ambassador Ji-won's voice came through another video link. She was still at the concordance chamber. "I agree with Dr. Hana, but I also think we need to make an offer to the peaceful species. Share defensive applications of the technology. Help them build their own mass drivers for protection, but not for aggression. Create a new balance of power where everyone has deterrence." President Dae-jung listened to all the arguments. Finally, he made his decision. "We do both. We build a network of mass drivers throughout human space. Titan, Luna, Ceres, Mars, Europa. Every major colony gets one. That's our guarantee of safety. But Ambassador Ji-won, you have authorization to negotiate with the other species. Offer them the basic technology, but keep the targeting systems and range calculations to ourselves. Let them defend their home systems, but make sure they can't threaten ours." Everyone nodded. It was a compromise, but it made sense. Give enough to prevent an arms race, but keep enough to maintain an advantage. On the Valkyrie homeworld, news of the fleet's defeat reached the imperial court within hours. The Emperor, an ancient Valkyrie who had ruled for 3 centuries, listened to Sub-Commander Rekleth's report in silence. When it was finished, he dismissed everyone except his military advisor. "This changes everything," the Emperor said quietly. "We thought the humans were weak. We thought their technology was primitive. We were wrong. Should we prepare a counterattack, Majesty? Develop our own kinetic weapons? No, we should sue for peace. The humans destroyed our flagship with a single shot. Imagine if they had fired 12 shots, 20, 50. They could wipe out our entire fleet without risking a single ship of their own." The Emperor's eyes closed. "Pride has cost us 4 ships and 6,000 warriors. Pride will not cost us our empire. Send an envoy to Earth, offer terms, acknowledge their sovereignty. The other empires will see this as weakness." 6 months had passed since the Battle of Jupiter. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Ambassador Ji-won found herself at the center of this new reality, negotiating treaties and agreements almost every day. The concordance chamber had become her second home. Sometimes she slept there, too exhausted to return to her quarters. The Valkyrie Empire had been the first to formally apologize. Their new envoy, a diplomat named Kelrax, had delivered the message personally. He was different from the arrogant representative who had dismissed humanity before. He was respectful, careful, perhaps even afraid. Other species had followed. The Thalorian Assembly sent gifts of cultural artifacts. The Krell Collective offered trade agreements. Even the reclusive Dren, a species that rarely spoke to anyone, had reached out to establish diplomatic channels. Everyone wanted to be on good terms with humanity now, but not everyone was friendly. Intelligence officer Su Jin had discovered something troubling while analyzing intercepted communications. She brought her findings to Admiral Kyung-soo first, then together they presented them to President Dae-jung. 3 empires are building their own mass drivers, Su Jin explained. displaying holographic images of construction sites on various alien worlds. The Grith Dominion has 2 under construction. The Arxian Coalition has begun building one on their largest moon. And the Helix Sovereignty just started excavating a site that matches the profile of a mass driver installation. President Dae-jung studied the images carefully. How long until they're operational? Based on their construction rates and our estimates of their technology, 6 to 9 months for the first ones. Maybe longer. Building a mass driver isn't simple even if they have the basic principles. Admiral Kyung-soo leaned forward. The real question is why they're building them. The Grith and Arxians have been rivals for centuries. If both of them get mass drivers at the same time, they might use them against each other. Or against us, President Dae-jung said quietly. If they think we're becoming too powerful, they might strike first. That was the nightmare scenario. That was what kept the president awake at night. Humanity had shown the galaxy a new weapon, and now that weapon was spreading. Soon everyone would have one. And then what? Would it bring peace through deterrence, or would it bring destruction on a scale never before seen? On Titan, Dr. Hana and her expanded team had been working around the clock. They had 3 new mass drivers under construction, and several more in the planning stages. But Hana was focused on something different now. Something that made the original mass driver look simple. I call it the deterrence grid, she explained to Commander Tae-sung, who had been promoted to general and given oversight of all mass driver operations. She pulled up a holographic map of the solar system. Instead of fixed installations that can only fire in certain directions, we create a network. Multiple mass drivers positioned throughout the system, all linked by a central targeting computer. An enemy fleet entering our space could be hit from multiple angles simultaneously. Tae-sung looked at the design with growing understanding. You're talking about crossfire. If they dodge one shot, they fly into another. Exactly. Right now our mass drivers are powerful but limited. We have to predict where the enemy will be and fire early because of the travel time. But with multiple installations working together, we can cover more possibilities. Even if they try to evade, we can hit them. How long to build this? The installations themselves? We're already building them. Luna's mass driver will be operational in 3 weeks. Ceres in 5 weeks. Mars in 2 months. The hard part is the targeting computer. We need something that can calculate firing solutions for multiple targets across vast distances, accounting for orbital mechanics, enemy movements, and coordination between installations. That sounds like something only an AI could handle. Hana nodded. Which is why I've been consulting with the AI research division. They think they can have a prototype system ready in 4 months. Tae-sung was about to respond when an alert sounded. His communicator beeped urgently. He answered it, and Admiral Kyung-soo's face appeared on the screen. General, we have a situation. The Velkari Empire is requesting emergency assistance. They're under attack. By who? The Helix Sovereignty. Apparently the Helix just finished their first mass driver, and they used it. On the Velkari homeworld, Emperor Vaklan watched in horror as reports came in from the outer colonies. The Helix had struck without warning, firing their new mass driver at a Velkari mining station. The station had been destroyed instantly, along with 30,000 workers. The Helix had sent a message with their attack. You are weak. Your empire ends now. Emperor Vaklan had lived for 3 centuries. He had survived wars, rebellions, and political intrigue. But this was different. This was terror on a scale he had never experienced. One shot, one simple projectile. 30,000 lives ended in a flash of light. He had 2 choices. He could retaliate with his own fleet, starting a war that would cost millions of lives. Or he could do something no Velkari emperor had ever done. He could ask for help. Send a message to the humans, Vaklan said to his advisors. Ask them for assistance under the Mutual Defense Treaty we signed last month. Tell them the Helix Sovereignty has attacked us with a mass driver weapon. Tell them we need help. His military advisor looked shocked. Majesty, we have never asked another species for military aid. It would be seen as weakness. We are weak, Vaklan said bluntly. The humans were right. We built our entire military around energy shields. Those shields are now obsolete. The Helix know this. That's why they're attacking now while we're vulnerable. If we don't ask for help, they will destroy our colonies one by one. Pride is not worth extinction. The message reached Earth within hours. President Dae-jung called an emergency cabinet meeting. The situation was unprecedented. An alien empire, one that had attacked humanity just 6 months ago, was now asking for protection. Ambassador Jiwan argued strongly for helping them. If we refuse, every species in the galaxy will know that our treaties mean nothing. They'll know we only care about ourselves. The Helix will destroy the Velkari. Then they'll come for someone else. Eventually they'll come for us, but General Yunji disagreed.
Why should we risk human lives to save people who tried to kill us?
Let them fight their own battles. President Daejong listened to both arguments. Finally, he spoke. 6 months ago, the Velkari attacked us because they thought we were weak. They learned they were wrong. Now the Helix is making the same mistake. They think because they have one mass driver, they can conquer whoever they want. If we don't stop them, they'll keep going. Eventually, every aggressive species will build these weapons and use them for conquest. We need to draw a line. He turned to Admiral Kyung-soo. Send Captain Dongwoo and the 3rd Fleet to Velkari space. Rules of engagement. Defend Velkari colonies from attack, but do not enter Helix territory. We're there to protect, not to conquer. The Admiral saluted. Understood, sir. What about our mass drivers? Put the deterrence grid on standby. If the Helix fires another shot, we fire back. And make sure they know we're capable of hitting their homeworld from here. Across the galaxy, other species watched nervously. Humanity was intervening in an alien conflict. No one knew what that meant for the future. Some saw it as humanity trying to become the galaxy's police force. Others saw it as humanity defending the principles they had established. Mass drivers could exist, but only for defense, never for aggression. Captain Dongwoo arrived in Velkari space with 12 ships. It wasn't a large force, but it didn't need to be. The Helix Sovereignty had 1 mass driver. Earth had 4 operational, with 3 more coming online soon. The mathematics of deterrence were simple. Dongwoo sent a message to the Helix government. This is Captain Dongwoo of the United Earth Navy. You have attacked a member of the Mutual Defense Network. Cease your aggression immediately or face retaliation. You have 1 mass driver. We have 4. Do the math. The Helix response came 3 hours later. It was short and angry. Humanity has no authority in this sector. The Velkari are our enemies. Stay out of our war. Dongwoo didn't argue. Instead, he sent coordinates to Admiral Kyung-soo. Sir, requesting authorization to demonstrate capability. Uninhabited asteroid in Helix space, showing them what we can do. The authorization came through. On Titan, Dr. Hana programmed the mass driver with the new coordinates. The target was a large asteroid in the Helix system, far from any colonies or ships. The shot would be visible to everyone but hurt no one. The mass driver fired. The tungsten rod crossed the void of space, traveling from human space deep into Helix territory. It took 6 hours to arrive. When it hit the asteroid, the impact was spectacular. The asteroid, which had been 2 kilometers across, shattered into thousands of pieces. The explosion was visible from the Helix homeworld. Dongwoo sent another message. That asteroid was 6 light hours away from Earth. We hit it from across interstellar space with perfect accuracy. Your colonies are much closer, and much easier to hit. Cease your aggression. Now. This time the Helix response was different, more respectful, more afraid. We are withdrawing our forces from Velkari space. We did not understand the scope of human capability. We will not attack again. 1 year had passed since the first mass driver fired. The galaxy had settled into an uneasy peace built on mutual fear and grudging respect. Earth's deterrence grid was now fully operational. 12 mass drivers positioned throughout the solar system, all connected to a central AI that could calculate firing solutions with frightening accuracy. No fleet could enter human space without being tracked by multiple weapons. Commander Bora walked through the halls of the ESS Prometheus, humanity's newest warship. She was young for a ship commander, only 28, but she had graduated at the top of her class from the new Space Academy. The Prometheus was different from older human ships. It was built for the new era. Faster engines, better shields, advanced sensors, and most importantly, it carried its own compact mass driver. The ship-mounted version was smaller than the massive installations on Titan or Luna. It could only accelerate projectiles to 5% light speed instead of 15. But that was enough. Any ship hit by a Prometheus mass driver shot would be destroyed. And the Prometheus could fire from anywhere, not just from fixed positions. Commander, we have received orders from Fleet Command. Her first officer, Lieutenant Sangwoo, reported. We're to escort a diplomatic convoy to the Thalorian homeworld. Ambassador G1 is negotiating a new cultural exchange program. Bora nodded. Escort duty wasn't exciting, but it was important work. Since humanity had developed the mass driver, they had become the unofficial peacekeepers of the galaxy. Other species requested human ships to escort valuable transports or patrol disputed territories. It was strange being the species everyone turned to for protection, when just a year ago everyone had dismissed humans as primitive. On Earth, President Daijun prepared for the anniversary ceremony. 1 year since the Battle of Jupiter. 1 year since everything changed. He had aged visibly in that time. The burden of leading humanity through this transition had taken its toll. His hair was completely white now. His face showed new lines, but he felt hope. Real hope. Because against all odds, the galaxy hadn't descended into chaos. The mass driver arms race had stabilized. The kinetic weapons limitation agreement was holding. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now talking to each other, united by their shared concern about relativistic weapons. Mr. President, they're ready for you, his aide said softly. Daejung walked onto the stage at the United Earth Assembly. Thousands of representatives from all human colonies had gathered here. Billions more watched across the solar system and on distant colony worlds. He looked out at the crowd and began to speak. 1 year ago, we were afraid. An alien fleet entered our space with the intention of conquering us. We were outgunned, outnumbered, outmatched by their technology. Everyone expected us to lose. Perhaps some of you expected it too. He paused, letting the memory settle over the crowd. But we didn't lose, because humanity has something that superior technology cannot replace. We have creativity. We have the ability to look at old problems and find new solutions. Dr. Hana and her team remembered something simple. Objects moving fast enough become weapons. They built something the galaxy had forgotten could work. And with that one shot, everything changed. The crowd applauded, but Daejung raised his hand for quiet. However, we must remember something else. With great power comes great responsibility. We have weapons that can destroy entire fleets. That can level cities. That can end civilizations. We built them to protect ourselves, and we succeeded. But now we must ensure they are never used for aggression, never used for conquest. We must be better than the empires that dismissed us. We must use our strength to build peace, not to create fear. More applause. Daejung stepped away from the podium, satisfied. He had said what needed to be said. Now it was up to the next generation to carry that message forward. On Titan, Dr. Hana gave a tour to a group of visiting Thalorian scientists. They floated through the control room of the original mass driver, examining the equipment with their unique sensory organs. The Thalorians communicated through light patterns, and their translator devices rendered it as speech. "This is remarkable engineering," one of them said. "Simple in concept, but the execution is extraordinary. The power requirements alone should have been impossible to achieve." Hana smiled. "We're good at solving impossible problems. Humans have been doing it since we lived in caves and learned to make fire. Tell us, Dr. Hana, do you regret creating this weapon?" It was a question Hana had asked herself 1,000 times. She thought carefully before answering. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the galaxy forced us to build weapons to prove we deserved respect. But I don't regret saving Earth. I don't regret showing the galaxy that humanity will not be conquered. Sometimes the only way to achieve peace is to make war too costly to consider." The Thalorian scientist's lights pulsed in a pattern that suggested understanding. "Your species has taught the galaxy an important lesson. We had become complacent. We thought our old technologies could never be surpassed. You proved us wrong. For that, we are grateful, even if the lesson was painful." Engineer Yuna approached carrying a data pad. "Doctor, we have final specifications for the next generation mass driver. It's smaller, more efficient, and can be installed on orbital platforms 1/10 the size of this one. We could put them on large ships if needed." Hana took the data pad and studied it. The new design was elegant, more compact, easier to build, easier to maintain, and just as deadly as the original. She had mixed feelings about that. "Start production on 3 prototypes," she said finally. "But Yuna, make sure the safety protocols are even stricter than before. I don't want these weapons firing accidentally ever." "Understood, Doctor." Across the galaxy in the deep space station that housed the Concordance Chamber, Ambassador G1 met with representatives from 7 different species. They were discussing the formation of a new organization, something that had never existed before, a Galactic Defense Council. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Instead of each species maintaining separate military forces and acting independently, they would coordinate, share intelligence, respond together to threats, and most importantly, they would monitor each other's mass driver installations to ensure no one was building weapons beyond the treaty. Limits humanity would serve as the enforcement arm, proposed Counselor Vren of the Thalorians. Your mass drivers have the longest range. Your targeting systems are the most advanced. If a species violates the treaty, you would be responsible for neutralizing their illegal weapons. G1 considered this carefully. It was a lot of power to give to humanity, but it was also a lot of responsibility and a lot of risk. If they enforced the treaty too strictly, species would resent them. If they were too lenient, the treaty would be meaningless. We would need absolute transparency, G1 said finally. If humanity is to be the enforcer, then our mass driver installations must be open to inspection by the Council at any time. No secrets, no hidden weapons. We hold ourselves to the same standard we hold everyone else. The representatives looked at each other. This was unprecedented. The species with the most powerful weapons volunteering to be monitored by everyone else? It was either brilliantly diplomatic or incredibly naive. The Velkari representative, Kelrax, spoke up. I support this proposal. Humanity has shown remarkable restraint with their power. When the Helix attacked us, humans could have conquered both our empires. Instead, they defended us and offered peace to our attackers. I trust them to enforce this treaty fairly. One by one, the other representatives agreed. The Galactic Defense Council was formed with humanity at its center. Not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as guardians of a peace built on mutual deterrence and shared responsibility. On the ESS Prometheus, Commander Bora received new orders. The ship would be assigned to the Defense Council as a rapid response vessel. If any species violated the treaty, the Prometheus would be dispatched to investigate. It was an honor, but also a heavy burden. She gathered her crew in the main assembly hall. They were young, most of them, fresh graduates of the academy. They had grown up in a world where humanity was respected, where alien species treated humans as equals. They didn't remember being dismissed as primitives. They didn't carry the old wounds. We have a new mission, Bora told them. We're now officially part of the Galactic Defense Council. That means we don't just protect Earth anymore. We protect anyone who needs protection. We enforce the rules that keep the peace. It won't always be easy. Some species will resent us. Some will test us. But we have to stay true to our principles. We use force only when necessary, and only to protect the innocent. Lieutenant Sang-Woo raised his hand. Commander, what if we're ordered to fire on human targets? What if Earth violates the treaty? It was a good question, an uncomfortable question, but one that needed to be asked. Then we follow our oath, Bora said simply. We swore to uphold the principles of the Defense Council. That oath doesn't change based on who the target is. If Earth breaks the rules, then Earth faces the consequences. That's what makes this system work. No one is above the law, not even us. The crew nodded, understanding the weight of what they had signed up for. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were peacekeepers, guardians of a new galactic order.